I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Delight Your Clients from Day One, Creating a Smart, Scalable Client Intake Process. I'm Diana Ecker, Content Marketing Manager here at Redbooth, and today I'm joined by Karen Sargent, our featured guest expert and today's presenter. In today's webinar, Karen is going to demonstrate what it means to create a smart, scalable client intake process and explain why doing so can benefit your bottom line. We'll leave time at the end for your questions. If you have questions at any time, feel free to type them into the GoToWebinar panel and we'll answer them during the Q&A. Karen is a consultant, a coach, and a process strategy expert. Previously, she served as client services lead for Matt Jensen Marketing, and she has experience building out client intake processes as well as working with agencies and firms to build and scale their processes. Karen is joining us from Portland, Oregon today, and we're so glad to have her with us. And with that, I want to pass it over to Karen.
Thank you, Diana. I am happy to be here, and I appreciate being asked to come talk about client processes. You know, systems are some of my favorite things to talk about, and that is probably one of the nerdiest things you've heard lately, but I am a systems girl, and so that means I see every day the improvements that a proper system can make in a business. Well, let's start with the big picture. So as a freelance business manager, I'm invited into companies to troubleshoot inefficiencies and help them streamline. And so from this vantage point, I see trends like for productivity and the challenges to it. And I see the things that businesses struggle with the most. And we're talking today about one of the biggies, what to do when you first bring a client on board. And it is one of the common trouble spots I see a lot in businesses. And there's also a lot of room for opportunity in businesses who are doing it pretty well already. So here is the overview, the essence of what we'll be talking about today. The first is good client intake processes make for good business. If there is one thing that I can leave you with today, it is that. The second is that systems will save your sanity and will help your business scale. And scaling means taking on more and more business and meeting that demand without breaking the bank or overworking your team. Another sanity saver is having your team all on the same page, so that they know who is doing what and you can delegate to them effectively. And of course, your systems, your client intake process, and all your systems, they need to be dialed into exactly how you do your work. No cookie cutters allowed. So we're going to be exploring all of that today, and I'm going to dive in. But before I do, I would love to hear what vertical you're in and what piece of information you came to this webinar hoping to learn or to get better at. So if you would you type into the box there the kind of work your business does with clients and what you're most looking forward to learning on this webinar. And I'm going to carry on. We begin our story with a success, a purchase. So remember that scene from Ghostbusters? You know, they were waiting forever to make a sale or to get a first client. And she hangs up that phone after that first call. She hits that fire bell and she's like, we got one. And for all of that, whether we're small businesses or whether we're larger, we all love to celebrate our wins. And maybe we even envision that the hard part is over because we're eager to get on to the fulfillment side of things, you know, what we do best. But there's that bridge in between that can sometimes spell trouble. And so some of the common problems that I hear when I go into businesses are, we always seem to reinvent the wheel with each new client. Like we close a sale and it's always just a bit of a fire drill or it's just not as smooth as we want it. And I hear from executives who spend considerable time and attention landing that client like a big fish, and they don't really feel secure about passing the baton on. They feel like they need to stay way more involved with the handoff instead of turning their attention back over to other big fish. And the problem with all these things, as you can guess, is that it doesn't put your business in the best light, and it can make your client uncomfortable. And people that are involved in that sales process, they do need to disengage and get back to their other priorities. So it happens often that a client intake system is one of the first things that I help my clients build out. So I want you to take a moment and have you think about your client intake process in whatever state it's in right now. And as you think about yours, we have a poll question to give you on this. Great. So give us an answer of how you think about your current intake process. And if there isn't one that fits exactly, go ahead and just choose the answer that's nearest to it. I had actually developed these options here. I went back through my project notes from past clients because I wanted to see what the biggest barriers to success were in this area. And these are what I boiled down the most common challenges to be. And some actually are nearly word for word.
So Karen, we've got some poll results to share. 43% of our attendees are saying we have a person who handles this, but if they ever left, ... And then 29% of our respondents are saying we're actually small or slow enough that we don't need one yet. And then we have 14% saying process, we wing it like we wing everything else, and 14% saying our process is already great. Actually, 0% of our attendees are saying a process won't really work for us, which suggests that everyone here does have an interest in process.
Great. Oh, I love it. All right. Well, if you would keep those up, and I want to walk through some of these challenges and see if I can bust some myths here and get you set up for the rest of what I'm going to show you today. So all of you who answered A's, it sounds like you have a good process, but what you will probably need is full transparency to the rest of the team and a centralized workspace to track it in. And so using project management software and creating your own template that you invoke each time there's a new client coming on board, that is going to go very far in solving your problem. Because the chief benefit to your team is the visibility into the process, and the chief benefit to you is that process is going to survive staff turnover without a glitch because you have the template. So you said we didn't have any B's, so I'm just going to gloss right over that. I was going to try to convince you that no variability does not mean that you don't streamline, but I think you all must be on board with me, so I'll just skip that. Processes, you wingers out there, the people who answered C, the people who answer that they like to wing things tend to be energized by it, by the high wire act of having things come together at the last minute. The thing is, it's not scalable, and at some point fatigue is going to set in. So I really do recommend using a system. And what I mean, when I say system, I mean a thought out series of steps. And you C types, you tend to be a little resistant to procedures, but let's see if I can't win you over by the end of the webinar. And for you D answerers, that you're too small or too slow, at least right now, you're still small and slow enough that you're able to one-off things. And so you haven't quite hit the crunch time yet, but don't consider yourself exempt, because not only do you want to get ahead of the curve and set yourself up to anticipate when the growth happens, you want to be ready to scale, but also remember that a smooth intake process can differentiate your business from your competitors, and that will actually help you position your business for this growth. And that's the message for you E answerers too, the ones that say that you already have a pretty decent client intake process. That's great, but a great client intake process can be taken to the next level, and you might see the returns in your business. You know, I just read a blog post yesterday from wheniwork.com on customer delight, and it said that customers already expect good service, and that 86% of clients would stop doing business with you if you didn't have good service. And 55% would pay more if it meant they were promised better service. So customer delight is good business. So even when things are good, when your process is good, let's bring them up to great. And if it's an opportunity where you need to improve, let's get on it. So I think we're ready to take a look at an example of a client intake system. So I am going to switch over to my desktop browser so I can show you a few things. All right, here we are. This is the Redbooth template library, and it's home to a number of project templates that you can save to your own workspace, and then you can begin to customize them in just a few clicks. And this is the client services section of that library. And here is the client intake template. And what you can do is you can save this to your Redbooth workspace. It's just a few clicks, and it ports itself over to your Redbooth workspace, and then it's ready to work and customize in your actual account. So I'm going to take a look over to my account. I have already populated, I've already brought one over, and you can see that it's here. This is the client intake process right here. So let me just orient you to what you're seeing right now. Across the top, these bold sections here, the bold titles, they are the major sections of the client intake process. And then the items inside are the lists, are the action items themselves. So these lists right now are populated with the best practices that I've gleaned from working with clients. But we're also, when we walk through it, we're also going to talk about how you can think about your own business processes and how you might want to customize it. So first things first, you need to start things off right when you bring on a client. Let's just think about your immediate first steps after you get that verbal yes. And we're over here in this first column. You need to do things like nail down the specifics of the statement of work, get the payment terms, get the agreement signed. And this is pretty much the point where other people are starting to come into the process, besides the sales team or the executive. And this is where the handoff might begin to happen. So it's a common trouble spot. And the key challenges here are getting the right things to the client in an organized fashion. A lot of times, and you guys answered it in the poll question, your process can live in somebody's inbox and it is not centralized. Another challenge is there's just too many cooks or it's too ad hoc. So having a list of things to get done can be a revelation. And listing them out here is what your business needs to do. And then you can just assign them and date them, and that will make it even better. So you can see that I already assigned that top one to me. Let me assign that second one to me too. If I want to date it, I'm going to click on that little calendar icon, and I'm going to just choose a date and click save. And since I'm the only one in this business here, I think I'm going to get stuck with this to do as well. But if you had other people in your business, they would be showing here, and you can select from a list. So when you think about your initial steps, think about them at whatever granularity that makes sense to you. Pretty much, if you needed to assign it to somebody and it had a specific due date, that's a good candidate for this list. So just populate out the list and then think about who was going to do it and when the date needs to get done, and just build it out that way. The benefits are your client sees a total professional at work, and the client doesn't feel rushed. Nothing gets dropped. And so the client doesn't have to come back to you with maybe an embarrassing email that reminds you about something that you had forgotten. All of that's taken care of if you build out these initial steps. And so next, we're going to think about internal systems and getting our ducks in a row. And the internal systems need to be set up to work with your new client. And maybe you have a long list, or maybe you just have a couple, but they're important. I've listed out here just some of the key common, systems that businesses use that you would be needing to add a new client to when you brought them on board, like your CRM, your project management, maybe your invoicing, time tracking, things like that. If you don't take the time to set these up ahead of time, things can get messy mid-project and things suddenly become not very findable. Or it just takes too much effort to keep finding things when they're not in their proper place. So to populate this list for your business, you just need to make a list of all the systems that you have and that you need to add your client to, and then just add them here. And I want to make a few comments about this last one here because it might be new to some of you. This is creating folders and naming conventions, and it simply means creating standards around how you're going to title documents and what the folder hierarchy looks like for where you're going to stash them. And this is especially important if you have different versions of the same document that you work on over time, copywriters for one, but a number of different verticals use that. You don't want to get anyone to get confused on what version they're looking at. And titling something appropriately and having everyone understand what that title means is so key. So if you put your attention here up front, it will pay dividends. And these things are exactly the things that will allow your business to scale up without giving you headaches. Next, you want to look at planning and strategizing. And this is the nuts and bolts of project management. And I've just assembled a few here that can serve as a jumping off point for your own brainstorming. These are the larger milestones that will help prompt you to drop in your own steps. And it centers around you taking the new work and integrating it into your existing workflow, getting the right team members assigned, making sure that you understand what the client goals and due dates are, and then building out all the task lists that will support you getting your deliverable to the client on time. So this list is going to vary for you, but there is a way to just drop in a new task. So if I have a call to meeting here, but if I needed to call another meeting, I would just click in that line there that I did and just start typing. And when I'm done, I'm just going to hit return. And let's say I want to call the meeting before I brief the team and management. So I just started typing, I hit return, and then I pulled my new addition down where I wanted it to be. And that's how you can customize this template as well. All right, let's turn our attention to the client experience and engaging the client and educating them on what it's like to work with us. This is important for everyone, but especially for those of you in a crowded market space. Maybe you sell a commodity service and the only differentiation is the experience of your brand. But really, all of us are looking to differentiate ourselves. And remember that statistic that I quoted, 55% of customers would end up paying more for excellent service. So this is a huge opportunity to build your business. And what we have here is delivering a welcome package and any training that you feel is necessary to bring your client on board. I'm going to go through the elements of a welcome package in a second because I think it's so important. But let me speak for just a second on training. You don't want to leave the client on their own to figure out any new systems that they need to be a part of to do business with you. It's too daunting. And you don't want to just send them a link to a knowledge base either. I think it's a great idea to cut custom videos with really specific examples that will resonate with your customer. Like a video with specifically the steps they need to take to maybe assign you work or to ask a question or whatever the system is about. So it not only educates them, but it lets them know that they're in good hands. And that's precisely what you want your customer to be feeling, especially when they start to come on board with you. So about that welcome package, which I believe is a really important component. When I say welcome package, I see this as a beautifully branded PDF that's branded with your product name or your company name and all of the colors, and it's customized with a client name. And it's just a warm welcome to your brand and the way you do business. And the elements of that welcome package can manage the client expectations, especially around potential problem areas such as handling exceptions or emergencies. So I have a list here of just some of the basics. Some of these are just as basic as business hours, but some of them are probably things that you may have not thought through as a team yet. And so it prompts you to really look at your business from the perspective of the customer and make deliberate choices about the things that make working with you as smooth as possible. And so there will be some to-dos here as well for your team as you think through what you want to say as a welcome to your clients. But when you have this beautiful, well-made PDF welcome package that looks totally professional, it will bolster your value. It will justify your pricing. And again, it tends to solve problems before they start because they do understand what the rules of kind of the rules and of doing business with you are. And so there's very little room for ambiguity. And clients don't just buy the end product, they buy the whole experience of working with you. So use this to differentiate yourself and to wow clients. So you can see that the whole client intake system kind of has a twofold purpose. It benefits your internal team, it lets you streamline, and more importantly, it lets you scale, which is adding more and more new clients without collapsing. But then it also benefits your clients as well because they're fully informed, they feel well taken care of. And when you have clients who feel that way, your business will scale. So I do want to open it up for questions, but before we go back, I do want to show you one quick thing. I want to go back to the template library and just highlight the other client-related templates that we have. I showed you client intake, but we also have a template for ongoing client care. This is the care and feeding of the client while the project is ongoing. So you're going to be doing your work, but there are also some steps that you don't want to ignore that can take care of the customer. And then, of course, all good projects come to an end. And we have a template for that that helps you delight your client right up to the very end of the project. So I want to wrap up by highlighting the key points of the client intake process. You have your initial steps, starting things off right, getting the deal closed smoothly with all the right things in order. You have your internal systems where you get your ducks in a row and you set up those systems to receive your new client and to create really smooth sailing for your team for the rest of the project. The next one is the internal project management, where you're going to start planning and strategizing right from the get-go. These are the steps for project kickoff that is going to set your team up for success. Then there's client onboarding and training, where you can engage the client and educate them on what it's like to work with you. And then there's that welcome packet, where you can manage expectations and solve problems before they start. And that is a great client intake process. And I think we're ready to open it up for questions if we have any.
Karen, we do. I'm going to start with our first question for you, which is, I've always believed in a personalized approach to welcoming new clients. Are you suggesting that we should take a cookie cutter approach?
That's a good question. So no cookie cutters approaches. Personalization is where it's at. And this is the beauty of the template. So use the template as a jumping off point to start brainstorming your own processes and your own action items. You know, it's so much more helpful to start with a prompt and to start with good ideas. So use the template as a good idea boneyard to help you streamline your thinking and be really efficient at building out your own client intake.
Great. Karen, we have another question. When you talk about delegating and you demonstrated how to assign a step to a person, do you think it's better to hand over full responsibility for client onboarding to one person, or better to assign different steps to different team members?
Oh, that's a good question. So the answer is going to be, it depends on your business. But again, here is where a centralized workspace and a template can really help. I think we tend to assign intake processes and systems like this to one person because handing it off from person to person is where it becomes problematic. And so a centralized workspace, like in project management software, allows multiple people to see the flow without dropping the baton. So you are able to assign to different team members and to have that process be really smooth, and you don't have to overload that one person in your office who's good at getting things done.
Great. We have another question, and Karen, I'm going to take this one. The question is, I want to try this out, but I'm not currently a Redbooth customer. Is there some way I can still do that? And the answer is yes. At the end of today's presentation, we'll be showing you how you can take everything you saw today for a 30-day free test drive. And Karen, we do have time for one more question, which is, in your work, what have been the biggest roadblocks for small creative agencies who want to standardize their processes but are having trouble getting started?
That is a gold star question. I love that question. Okay, I think there's two things I want to highlight here. The first, I think, is setting aside the time to do it. Press of business is very compelling, and sometimes it's not even just compelling; it's overwhelming. And so, what we're asking you to do here is kind of pull out of your day-to-day and brainstorm a process that's going to make your future day-to-day more streamlined. Even though your head can see the benefits of that, it's still a struggle sometimes to break away and take the time to do it. I urge you to do that though, because it will absolutely allow you to scale, and it will bring the overwhelm down. The second thing I want to highlight, I see a lot of higher ups, executives and such, brainstorm processes like these without representation from the front lines, so to speak. And they seem to create these idealized processes instead of something a little more real world. So I think I would urge everyone to have a mix of people in the room, and it really doesn't take much. It's a whiteboard, a marker, and about an hour of people's time. And if you have the right mix of people in the room, these things come together quite quickly. And then everyone's bought in and on board, and it really does reflect kind of a nice balance between how things really do get done, but with a little dash of idealism, because you really want to step up and impress the customer. And so there will be some, new things involved and maybe a little leveling up to do, but it's a nice harmony if you have the right mix of people in the room.
Great. Well, Karen, thank you. That wraps up our Q&A for today. I want to thank you all for joining us today, and thank you, Karen, for being here today with us.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.